What would the election map look like if we included a silent majority voter case for 10% more Republican votes than are being shown in polling averages? Well, this video seeks to answer that question. The ground rules for this silent majority hypothesis is that we start with the JHK model, which you can see over here, as a basis for comparison, and we go through the polling averages state by state and adjust them for the silent voter hypothesis, a long-time case for Republicans. We will add a fixed percent to each state's Republican vote share in order to reflect the percent silent vote in the given hypothesis. In this video, we seek to ask the question, what if the silent vote is 10%? And if the state is already Republican, we add 0% more to the Republican vote. Let's not overstate the case for states that already poll Republican. Assume that these states have a silent majority voter already factored in, and there's less shame in voting Republican in a Republican state. So what you see here is the JHK voter map. Now, it's not exactly the same. You see, this is the real JHK voter map, and you can see Democrats at 318 against Republicans at 203, whereas this map has Republicans at 204 and Democrats at 319. And the reason for that is that they have these states here where some of the votes are split, and they've counted them a little bit differently, whereas in this map, we've simply allocated them to where we think they're going to go. But basically, it's very, very, very close, within one vote of the JHK model, which I think is a good basis for comparison. And what we're now going to do is go state by state through the polling averages. This, for example, is a polling averages. You can see these dots represent Republican polls, and then the line represents the average of the polls. Again, the blue dots represent Democrat polls, and the line represents the average for Democrat votes. And what we're going to do is we're going to say, what if the silent majority case, which a lot of the Republicans in the comment section below think is absolutely real. Remember, in 2016, Hillary Clinton, according to the poll data, was poised for a major victory. But ultimately, she didn't win the Electoral College. And the reason for that, basically, was that there was a silent majority voter there, however you want to characterize that, or a silent voter, who tipped some of the elections in favor of Donald Trump. And that this is a trend that we've seen in a few elections, and is particularly strong that the thesis goes under Donald Trump, because Donald Trump's such a divisive character. So let's do that. So here we have it. There's the JHK map. There's our JHK map. And now we're going to adjust it. So let's go right in. And with Alabama, what we can see is that there's an 18.7% lead for the Republicans. And according to the rules, we don't need to adjust that because it's already a Republican state. Alaska is polling for the Republicans as well. Again, we don't need to adjust that because it's a Republican state. Arizona is polling plus 5% for the Democrats. So what we're going to say is Arizona now tips toward the Republicans. We are not going to be too specific about how we tip it. What we'll do is when we use a silent majority voter thesis, this is called a tilt. Actually, this is the tilt. This is the tilt Republican. So what we'll do is we'll make it tilt toward the Republican side if that is how the thesis plays out. So there it is. Arizona now tilts Republican. Let's move on to the next state, Arkansas. Arkansas is already pro-Trump, so we don't need to adjust that. California. California is 30% pro-Biden, which means that even if there was a hidden 10% in the polls of a Republican vote, that you'd still be 19% away from ousting the Democrats from that particular state. So the Democrats will hold California, according to our hypothesis. Here, Biden is 10.6% above Trump in Colorado. So what we'll do is because it's so close, we will reduce Colorado from strong Democrat to simply tilting Democrat. And there it is. So now Colorado merely tilts Democrat because it's now 0.9% away, according to our 10% silent majority voter hypothesis. Let's keep going. Connecticut. Connecticut is 21% in favor of the Democrats, and therefore a 10% silent majority voter in favor of Trump will not shift that state. Delaware is 21% in favor of the Democrats. Silent majority voter does not matter. Here, the silent voter hypothesis will tip this election. Right now, Biden's favored at plus 2.7%. That's going to tip it about 7% in favor of the Republicans. So we can go into Florida, and we're not going to be too confident about it. We're just going to let it tilt Republican. There it is. It tilts Republican under a silent majority voter hypothesis. So let's go now to Georgia. Georgia's already 1.6%. Republican, so it's already factored in. We already sort of have concluded that Georgia's going to go Republican to a lesser or greater extent. Here in Hawaii, Biden's at plus 27%, so 10% silent majority voter is not going to affect anything. In Idaho, Trump's at plus 25%. Again, it's already a Republican state. We don't need to make any adjustments. In Indiana, Trump's at plus 14.2%. No adjustments necessary. Iowa, Trump's at plus 1.7%. Let's just quickly check where we've got Iowa on the map. Yeah, Iowa is also, I think it's leaning Republican right now, so we'll leave it there. And Kansas is plus 9% for the Republicans, so we've already factored that in. Kentucky, plus 16.2% for the Republicans, no adjustment necessary. Louisiana, plus 16% for the Republicans, no adjustment necessary. Maine is plus 10.9% for the Democrats. So 10% silent majority voter puts Trump within 0.9% of Biden right now, which obviously could go either way. If Biden loses 0.9% between now and the election, that could mean it wins it for Trump. What we're going to do is we're going to go into Maine, and we're going to reduce it to merely tilting Democrat. There it is. Maine's reduced to tilting Democrat now. And let's keep walking through the states. The next state is going to be Maryland. Maryland is plus 24% for Biden. So we will leave it as it is because even with a 10% silent majority, we're sitting at 14% away from the Republicans are sitting 14% away from the Democrats. In Massachusetts, Biden's up 34%, so a 10% silent voter, not going to affect anything. Michigan, Biden's at plus 7.6%. So, and this is a key Rust Belt state that if you're a Republican needs to be one for Trump, and if you're a Democrat, of course, you need to hold it for Biden. So this is going to flip at a 10% silent voter scenario. Michigan will flip. We're flipping Michigan to tilting Republican. There it is. Michigan now tilts Republican under this thesis, and we can keep going through it. Here's Minnesota. Minnesota is plus 6.4% for Biden, and so Minnesota will also now switch to tilting Republican. So there's Minnesota, key Rust Belt state. So under this 10% silent voter hypothesis, Trump is now taking the Rust Belt. I guess that's unsurprising. 10% a bit large, but if you disagree with 10% being silent majority or a silent voter hypothesis, then tell me what you think it is, and I'll make a video examining your scenario. Give it to me in the comment section below, and I'll do it. Mississippi, 12.3% in favor for Trump, so we don't need to adjust it under this hypothesis. But yeah, I'd encourage you guys to tell me what you think the silent voter is. I think it's going to be something. It was something in 2016, but I think Democrats think it's going to be significantly reduced, whereas the Republicans appear to be telling me in the comments below that it's going to be bigger than it was last time. So we're sort of bifurcated in terms of how we're seeing it. But Missouri is plus 6.5% Republican already, so no adjustment necessary is my conclusion here. Montana, plus 8.4% for the Republicans, no adjustments necessary. Nebraska, it's plus 2% Trump, and but it has previously polled at plus 7% Biden. So let's just see where we have Nebraska in our model, which again was, yeah, so here it's actually strongly Republican. That's from the JHK forecast, where you'll see that they agree with that, though they're saying that there's some toss-up districts within, I think the 2nd district within Nebraska is either split. Yeah, so they're split, and that's why. But they have it basically as a strong Republican state. So we're not going to shift that at all. Nevada. So Nevada's plus 6.5% for Biden, classic case, where a 10% silent majority voter would, or silent voter I should say, would overturn this state. So Nevada, we're going to switch up from leaning Democrat to merely tilting Republican. So there it is. Nevada now tilts Republican. I mean, if you believe that the silent voter is 10%, then Nevada is no longer a Democrat state. New Hampshire. New Hampshire is plus 8.1% for Biden. Quite the lead, but not 10%. So we're going to switch over New Hampshire. New Hampshire is now going to move from Democrat to tilting Republican. And there it is. New Hampshire now tilts Republican. Let's move on to the next state. New Jersey. New Jersey's plus 19%. Solid Democrat state. That is not, there's no conceptual silent voter that's going to shift that. New Mexico, 13.1% ahead of Trump, and even At closest, it was plus 11.6. So we're going to hand that back to the Democrats. Maybe we should reduce what we think, from sort of strong Democrat, whatever. But you know what? It's a Democrat state. We'll leave it as is. New York, plus 21.6, 26.8% in favor of the Democrats. So there's no silent voter who's going to switch that. North Carolina, in this model, it's polling at plus 1.3% for Biden. 10% silent vote. Absolutely, North Carolina becomes Republican. Right now, we have it as a toss-up in this model because it was backed on that JHK model. But we're gonna change that now to tilts Republican. North Carolina now tilts Republican, and we will continue on. North Dakota. North Dakota is 25% in favor of Trump. So no, an added 10% in favor of the Republicans would basically not make a difference. Just be a more Republican state. Ohio, 0.9% in favor of Trump. Let's just see where we have Ohio on this map. Ohio is, it's leaning Republican here. So we will not change that because it's already Republican. Oklahoma, 23% in favor of the Republicans. No need to change that state because it's already heavily in favor of the Republicans. Oregon, plus 12% in favor of Biden. So there's Oregon. I guess we can knock Oregon down if you want to a mere 2% lead. But I think I haven't done that with the other states, so we'll just leave it as is. But we still think it's going to go Democrat, even with a 10% silent voter thesis. Pennsylvania, key Rust Belt state where Biden was born. But Biden only has a 5% lead here, 5.1% lead, which under a 10% silent voter means that Pennsylvania, a key Rust Belt state that the Democrats are looking to win, and the Republicans, I think, won in 2016. We'd have to check that. They were very close anyway. Will now shift to tilting a Republican under this theory. So a lot of the Rust Belt's starting to fade away from the Democrat control. You need 270 to win. Some of the cleverer amongst you might have noticed already. Under this thesis, the Republicans are now heavily favored to win. I think Trump won last time by 303 votes. So we haven't even finished this. Under a 10% silent voter thesis, we are already, the Trumpsters anyway, are already seeing results better than the 2016 election. But we'll continue on through. South Carolina, plus 6.8% in favor of Trump. There's no need to adjust that state. Tennessee, plus 12% in favor of Trump. Again, no need to adjust that state. Texas, plus 1% in favor of Trump. Let's just make sure that Texas indeed leaned Republican here. It did. So it's already Republican. 10% more would just make it more Republican. No need to adjust that. Utah, plus 11.7% for Trump. It's a Republican state. No need to adjust that. Virginia, plus 10.7% for Biden. So 10% silent majority voter. And, if Trump moves plus 7% in the polls, in these polls here without the silent majority vote, then the state could flip to the Republicans. So what we'll do is reduce Virginia to similarly tilting Democrat. There it is. Virginia now only tilts Democrat. And let's progress through here. Washington, heavily Democrat state, 26.1%. So no silent majorities eating into that. West Virginia, heavily Trump country state. And then Wisconsin. Wisconsin is plus 6.5% in favor of Biden. Key state. I think some of the protests have rolled on through there, but a 10% silent vote would switch Wisconsin from what it is currently, which is leaning Democrat, to tilting Republican at the very least, under this pretty optimistic thesis for the Republicans. But there it is. Wisconsin has now switched over to the Republican Party. And I think that's all the states. Yep, that's it. So FiveThirtyEight, for whatever reason, doesn't actually poll every single state. Some of the states they deem so heavily in favor of one party or the other that they don't bother tracking any of the polls. Otherwise, I think they're just missing a few states too. But from what we can see, from the poll data that we looked at, factoring in that silent voter thesis, this is what the map now looks like, with 10% silent voters voting Republican. This is the Republican sort of Trump landslide scenario that they keep talking about, and it's entirely pinned on whether or not the silent voters are, in this case, are 10%. Now, many of you sitting in the comment section will say it's absolutely ridiculous to imagine that 1 out of 10 people in this country are either, when they get called, not reporting their answers because they're Republican versus Democrat, or they're stating that they're Democrats and they're actually Republicans. It's just too big a total. And frankly, I'm with you on that. But the Republicans on here do think that this is possible. What I will say is in 2016, all the polling averages showed a 99+% chance for the Democrats winning. And I mean, it looked pretty legitimate. And there was a silent voter there that tipped things just enough in favor of the Republicans that they won 303 votes. But here what we see is the Republicans sitting at 325. So this is a landslide for the Republicans. This is one of the strongest results that we've seen in recent times for Republicans. A Democrat sitting at 213. 270 votes needed to win. The Republicans in this case are 55 votes, electoral college votes, ahead of the threshold, which is right there, that they need to win. That's that 55 electoral college votes. And the Republicans, in this case, would sweep the board. So tell me what you think. Did you think this was foolish? Do you think there's a better way of going about it? What percent do you think the silent voter is? For those of you who are Democrats, is there actually a silent Democrat vote that's larger than the silent Republican vote this time around? If so, why? What's changed? I want to know. Leave your comments in the comment section below. And if you found this video exciting, interesting, intriguing, then give it a like, give it a follow, give it a subscribe, and thanks for watching.